Coming to you from inside the suites at Globe Life Field, two Rangers broadcasters who come on your TVs every day of the season to talk about the Rangers. Now they're putting down their broadcast mics to pick up the podcast ones because they are still talking Rangers.
Hey everyone, welcome into episode 3 of Still Talking Rangers, presented by our friends at Whataburger. Alongside Dave Raymond, I'm Jared Sandler. Thanks so much for being with us, and I'm excited. We got a big guest joining us today.
Wow, very sizest of you. Yeah, he's like 6'11", but he's also kind of important in the Rangers organization.
Captain?
No!
Oh, I'm trying to think who else is 6'11" in the...
Chris Young.
Chris Young.
Yeah,
Rangers
president of baseball operations.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Too.
Always good to talk to the guy who knows what the heck's going on. We know it's not us, so let's get some answers.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to chat with CY coming up here in a little bit. Quickly, we're having this conversation. Rangers riding a 3-game winning streak, just beat the Rockies 2-1. 2 more games against the Rockies. Then the Astros come to town, and then a road trip that begins with the Yankees. But I'm looking forward. First series between the Rangers and the Astros, opportunity for the Rangers to kind of put their foot on the pedal. And Jock Peterson said it this offseason, changing of the guard, right? The Astros have run this division. The Mariners are in first place right now. They're off to a great start this season, but this has been Houston's division. This is going to be the Rangers' first chance to show that maybe that's all in the past, and we're now looking ahead.
4-gamer, too, which I love, because you can always get a little tension by the end of a 4-game series between two teams that don't particularly like each other anyway. And it's interesting that Houston, the start of their season's been a little bit like the Rangers. Pitching's been great. It's not that they can't hit. They can't seem to score. And you look at the numbers, like numbers of at-bats with bases loaded or runners in scoring position. They're top couple in baseball. But their run production is way down. So it's very interesting. They're going through some of the similar struggles the Rangers have had. Christian Walker's been a disaster to start the year, and that way for them. So, they're trying to sort some things out. It's going to be a very interesting series, very interesting weekend.
I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
Also can't wait to chat with Chris Young. We're going to step aside for a second. Let's hear from our friends at Whataburger. When we come back, Rangers President of Baseball Operations, Chris Young, joins us on Still Talking Rangers.
Okay, Jared, Whataburger's Mushroom Swiss Burger is basically a mushroom lover's dream. 2 layers of perfectly grilled mushrooms, creamy au jus sauce, and cheese so melty it should have its own fan club. Try it before it's gone. All right, well, we are still talking Rangers and excited to have Chris Young with us, President of Baseball Operations, and see why it's been a week today as we record this on a Tuesday. It's been a week since Brett Boone was at least introduced to the team, right? And you have a new hitting coach. You went through quite a little bit leading into that. How are you feeling today?
Well, I feel good. I feel good about our group. I feel good about the hitting coaches as a unit, with Justin Veely and Brett Boone sharing the co-hitting coach responsibilities, and then Seth Connor remaining in the role he's been in, supporting them. And I've characterized it similar to what we've gone through on our pitching side, where we have Mike Maddox as our head pitching coach, we have Dave Bush, who's the assistant pitching coach, and then Jordan Teagues, who's our bullpen coach. Jordan, formerly our minor league pitching coordinator, now our bullpen coach. What I'm getting at is that this is a collective team of coaches. The game has gotten very big and broad. There are a lot of different specializations within hitting, within pitching, and it takes multiple coaches to really cover all the disciplines within a respective hitting offense. And so Justin and Brett, I feel like work together very, very well. They complement each other. I think that what Brett provides is exactly what we needed, and my hope is the guys will continue to respond to the combination of these guys leading the charge.
It's almost like, you got to build a roster that fits. Obviously, you want talented players, but players that fit. But now you got to build a roster and you got to build a staff and all these different departments that all fit, right? I mean, and the complementing of the skills and what they bring to the table.
Completely. And there's so many elements to these roles, and there's, on the hitting side and the pitching side, there's a biomechanical aspect to it. There's the mechanical movement that the players are required to do. There's the game preparation, the game planning. There's the in-game training that we do pregame and in the cages. And then I always say one of the most important elements is the psychological component, where it boils down to just connecting with a human being and being able to get the best out of that human, being able to inspire that person to go out and execute all the things that you've worked on, and go out and do it with confidence, conviction, and belief. And sometimes that's the hardest part. And that's why I say the best coaches are psychologists. And it really, in some ways, may not even matter how well or good you are on the technical side if you can't execute on the psychological piece, because I think that to me is the most important piece of I always say being a major league player is super hard. And the hardest thing is to go out there on any given night in front of 40,000 fans and be the worst player on the field, and then come back the next day and believe that you're not the worst player. And so I say the game is played between the years. I really believe that, and I think that's a big aspect of coaching. But as I look at it, Jared, our job is to provide our players with every resource possible to be successful, and that includes having a team of coaches that can cover all of those respective areas.
It's so tricky, right? Because you think you just take a certain thing that we do on a day-to-day basis, right? Maybe walking. And if you had to think about, well, what does my ankle do when I walk? What should I be doing with my ankle? Or, my forefoot or my calf or my right? If you start to think it through, executing it, you'd look really silly trying to walk. But we just walk.
Yeah,
And now that's oversimplifying a little bit what hitters do
yeah,
or pitchers do.
yeah,
But there is a certain bit of it that is like, look, you know how to pitch, you know how to hit.
yeah,
Let's maybe simplify it
yeah,
or whatever, right? Just
yeah.
kind of find the right way to get somebody to that point.
Well, Dave, I describe it like you're a golfer,
Yeah,
and is your golf swing the same every day?
I wish.
It's yeah, even hold a hole for me. So there are moments where you're locked in and it feels good. Your rhythm, your tempo, your timing's there. And there are days where it's just off and it doesn't feel, and you're fighting yourself and you can't quite make the adjustment. It's the same for these guys. They're not robots. And if they were, then they'd be at their best every single day, but they're not. And so we have to find ways to continue to support them and help them be their best, even when they're not feeling at their best.
What did you need to know from Brett or hear from others in reference to Brett that gave you the confidence he was the guy?
Well, one, just the desire to do the job. I mean, the job's hard. Being a coach is really hard. It's a huge effort and commitment, and you have to fit into a team environment. We have to be aligned in terms of our values and what the coach believes this team can accomplish, and the knowledge of the player being up to speed in today's game. The alignment with obviously our other hitting coaches, and with the manager, and then certainly with the front office. And so there were a lot of critical elements to this, but I think that knowing Brett, having known the Boone family for a long time, there was a comfort level for me that I knew Brett's a baseball guy and he's going to understand it. I felt like that was along the lines of what we needed. Now, is he willing to jump right in and come in midseason? Is he going to come in with crazy ideas? Is he going to come in and try to reinvent the wheel? Because if that's the case, I didn't think that was necessarily what we needed. We needed somebody to come in and kind of listen, learn, understand our personnel, and inject some confidence and optimism and maybe even a little bit of swagger. And Brett was kind of known for that as a player. And so understanding his personality, we felt like it may be a good fit. He had a pre-existing relationship with Boch going back to when he played for him in San Diego. So there were a lot of things that lined up that really made this kind of an easy choice for us. But most importantly, Brett's willingness and desire to do the job, and that was a huge piece of it.
We've had players, and maybe specifically pitchers, talk about when you were recruiting them, in free agency, that leveling with a pitcher was influential, that they felt like they were going to an organization led by someone who understood what it meant to be in their shoes. But we've also heard a lot of people talk about well, I want to play for Boch.
Yeah.
When you brought Boch on, did you realize, or was that maybe a part of the equation, like how just naturally, without even trying, his presence was going to attract people to want to be here?
Well, I think, I mean, to be honest, I mean, his presence attracted me. That, just who he is, and I had the good fortune of playing for him for one season, so I had a background with him. But he was, very frankly, my favorite manager for whom I played, and I only had a season with him, and so that left a lasting impression on me. Now, as I told Boch at the time, and I've said it publicly, we didn't hire Boch because I had a fun year playing for him. We hired him because he fit all the criteria at the time with the Texas Rangers that we needed. But there's no doubt in my mind, Jared, that Boch is a player's manager, and players love playing for him. They respect the heck out of him, and um, he's a huge piece of our success, and, and I think that we're not, we don't win in 2023 without Bruce Bochy leading it, and my hope is that he's gonna get us back there this year.
So that's a perfect segue into another topic that I really like, which is culture.
Mhm.
Um, because creating a culture and a place where there's an expectation, right?
Yeah.
That, there's some places, and I've worked for teams in the past where the goal is for guys to get to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, a very worthy goal. I mean, you've accomplished something. But in some places, it's like, it's not about getting to the big leagues. It's about winning at the big leagues, right? And that is understood. It comes with a part of putting on that uniform. Now, there are a few places like that, right? But it's a real challenge to create that expectation and to have it just be part of the DNA.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of a hire. And I definitely feel like your mission has basically been that. Am I
No,
right?
Dave, I think you characterized it very, very well. For a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, it's what the sport is about. It's about the integrity of the sport. It's about winning. And I was fortunate enough to play the game for a long time and played on World Series championship teams, and I played on teams that lost close to 100 games, and I know the feeling as a player. I love our fans, and I feel like our fans deserve a winning team year after year. They deserve to have a team that they can be proud of, that they feel like has a chance to compete for a championship. I mean, that should be our goal as an organization, to provide our fans with that experience. There is no reason with the resources we have in this building, in this market, that we should not be able to compete for championships year after year. So sustained success is a very important piece of that. And then kind of to what you were saying, most players, their careers are short. And I feel a sense of obligation to our players that if they are putting on a Texas Rangers uniform, the time that they spent in our organization, and it may be their entire career for some of them, that they were with an organization that was committed to winning, that they were there was an organization committed to excellence, committed to winning. And, within certainly our front office, our coaching staff, we expect that on a daily basis, and I think that's why it's hard on a lot of us when we don't win, when we haven't. The last year was hard, and there have been some moments this season where it's hard because we wanna get off to this great start, and we're not playing our best baseball, and so we wear it. We wear it hard because we want to provide our fans with that experience, we wanna provide our players with that experience, and ultimately, we wanna be known as an organization that year after year, is committed to excellence, and so when it doesn't happen, it hurts.
That pain is good though, right? That frustration, that pain is real and it's good. No, I really believe this because if you go to certain ballparks where they will, people will come, talk about certain fan bases. Oh, they'll boo these guys to death. They're so tough on their team. Yeah, you know why? Because the expectation is that they will win and because they care. And that's created by that shared mission
Yeah.
with the fans, with
Yeah.
the players. But a big part of that now is, okay, you make that commitment. Boch makes that commitment. And now these guys in the clubhouse, that's great. Like,
Yeah.
wow, I'm excited. They make
Yeah.
that commitment to me.
Right.
But it's reciprocal,
Completely.
right? You got to commit back to me now that you're here to win. You're here to
100%.
get behind a runner.
100%.
You're here to soak up some innings that you don't want to soak up, right? That
Look,
sort of
it's
stuff.
100%. And I describe our relationship with our players as a partnership, and we want to provide our players with everything possible to be successful. And in turn, we want them to maximize their abilities by tapping into those resources and utilizing them and playing the game the right way and doing things the right way and giving their best effort on a daily basis. And I don't feel like that's too much to ask. And I think that we try to be selective with the types of people that we bring into the organization, people that we are confident will exude those behaviors. And it actually gives me great pride. Even last year when things didn't go well, the one thing I could say, we didn't win the number of games we expected. We underachieved in a lot of ways. We had some difficult circumstances, there's no doubt. But I can say with complete conviction that the team played hard every single night. There was never one night where they showed up to the field and they didn't expect to win, or where they rolled over or they didn't play the game the right way. And that gave me a lot of pride because if they do that, then we can live with the results. But by and large, if we do that with talented players who are hungry, more often than not, they're going to be successful.
There's so many directions I'm thinking just from like a culture and a people standpoint. And, we've talked about this. You just mentioned it, right? There's the talent side of it. There's the person side. I think the easiest one is Nathan Eovaldi because I don't know that any of us have had feedback from other people to the degree that we hear the impact Nathan Eovaldi has on not just pitchers.
Watching him too,
Yeah,
right?
the way he goes about it. But I want to ask you about Patrick Corbin.
Yeah.
You guys brought him in the middle of camp out of need because of injuries. I think people naturally, not that we don't do this. You go Baseball Reference, you look at the numbers, right? But I remember asking Kevin Franzen, who used to play and now works for the Nationals, and he said, and I was like, what can you tell me about this guy? And he said, look at his ERA and look at his starts. And you tell me how many pitchers will go out there and make as many starts, throw as many innings with those numbers. He said that guy was one of the most respected guys on that team because it was clear that even when things weren't going well, his DNA was to compete and to be a teammate. How much did that mean to you guys when you were evaluating?
Well, I think it was a big part of our analysis and calculus in pursuing Patrick. There were other pitchers available, and we chose Patrick, one, because of just the sheer innings that he has posted year after year, I think since 2015, really. But one of the things I like to look at is the pitcher's track record, and Patrick has had real success as a major league player.
He was an all-star.
He was an all-star, right? He's one of the best pitchers. He got a huge contract with the Nationals. He went to Washington and they won the World Series, but maybe things didn't go as well as maybe he expected when he signed that contract. But based on everything we had heard about him as a person, everything we knew, everything that came out in my conversation with him, suggested that this guy is a competitor. He's a winner. He's made a ton of money in his career. He doesn't need to take basically a small deal with the Texas Rangers to justify his career. He was motivated. He's pitching for something beyond money, beyond fame. He's pitching for pride. He's pitching because he's competitive. And, those are attributes and traits to me that really stand out. And it made me confident that, hey, if we get him in our environment, what I believe is going to be a winning environment with a team that we expect to score runs and give our pitchers a lot of run support, and surround him with guys like Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom and Cody Bradford and Tyler Mahle and John Gray and, young players like Jack Leiter and Kamar Rocker. Like, this is a guy who maybe doesn't have the weight of the world in his contract on his back, and maybe we're going to be able to bring out the best in him. And, so far, I think it's proven true. This is a real competitor. He's been great every start he's pitched, and I think he's feeding off the culture of the pitching staff right now, which they're taking a lot of pride in going out there and shutting down the opponent night after night.
And jumped in early in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Brutally cold.
Yep.
Throws whatever it was 4 1/3 that
Yeah.
day when he hadn't really
Yeah.
thrown in a game to that point. I mean, there's so many things about him. He's been delightful.
Yeah.
And he's another great pivot point in the conversation because a question that we ask, and here we are kind of marrying a little bit of old school with a guy like Brett Boone,
Yeah.
right? And for that matter, Mad Dog.
Yep.
You got guys who have done it in a different generation and era, but are really cagey and bright. And you have plenty of intel coming through all sorts of channels. Anyway, we always like to look at pitchers and we're trying to find the reason why,
Mhm.
right? And we've all kind of been trained, I think, in the last decade well, what's his spin rate? How's the velocity? Is his pitch mix changing? Whatever, all this information that we
Yeah.
now have, maybe there's an answer in there. Now, I would tell you, I'm not the best at this. I'm not an analyst for you. I can't figure it out. I can't figure out Corbin. I can't figure out Malley. I look at their numbers. I'm like, these guys are flat out dealing. They're
yeah.
competing every day. And there's a part of me that is really happy that we can't find that answer
Yeah.
because maybe the answer isn't something that we can't quite measure. How would you explain what those guys have done?
Well, I think first of all, they're good for different reasons. I do think they each have some unique characteristics that have allowed them to succeed. We'll start with Tyler Malley. I think his fastball is very unique. The shape, the vertical movement on the pitch, the ride, it gets on hitters. And he's showing elite command. I mean, he's really been very good at hitting his spots, not missing over the heart of the zone, and then his splitter, his slider have all been solid as well. But the fastball has ride. It gets on hitters. I think it takes him an at bat or two to adjust. And then you couple that with really good command. He's locked in, he's dialed in, and he's ultra competitive. So I think those are, a combination of things that have made him successful. With Patrick, I would say his fastball doesn't quite have the same ride or life as maybe Tyler's does. But he's commanded it very well. He's able to throw it to both sides of the plate. He's really increased the usage of his cut fastball, which has allowed him to kind of throw it inside to righties, keep him off balance. He's worked on a changeup. He's got his slider still. So I think most what he's done most importantly is he's been able to keep hitters off balance. He has not beaten himself with walks. And he's really been able to read swings and see, okay, the hitter is wanting the ball close, so I'll stay away. Or the hitter's diving out over, I'm going to keep the ball close. And that the cutter usage and the frequency of that increasing, I think, has really been a good pitch for him and allowed him to succeed. But these are savvy major league pitchers. They know how to read swings. They know how to pitch. They know what they have to do to be successful, and they have conviction in themselves. And I think those are some of there's some physical characteristics and their pitches that you can measure, and there's some intangibles that explain their success as well.
Do you, well, following up a little bit on on Corbin, do you see a little 2015 Chris Young in Patrick Corbin?
He's more talented than that, yeah. He's more talented. He can do more things with the baseball, but I see the competitor. I mean, I see the competitor with Malley. I had Evo's competitiveness and Jacob's intensity when I pitch. I just didn't have their stuff. I told Jacob recently, I said, I wish I could have thrown one pitch in the big leagues at 99 miles an hour like you, just to know what it felt like. But what's fun though, Dave, is I love watching these guys. I just love seeing them go about it. They're such great people. I love seeing them have success. I love seeing the way they represent our organization, and they're just easy guys to root for. And all of them together, it's a great group. It's a great pitching staff, and it's a great group of guys on the team too. I mean, these guys, sometimes I see the pain on their face when they don't perform, and it hurts me to see them, because they care so much. And really, I love our guys. I'm very proud of the way they represent our organization.
All right, I think we want to have some fun with you
Yeah.
here in a second, but I want to ask one quick question. The competitiveness, guys, the puzzle, trying to figure out. Dave's talking about the numbers, and and that's one of the best parts of this game, right? I think fans love any sport for different reasons.
Yeah.
One of the things I love is trying to play along.
Yeah.
Right. And all right, like the other day, they gave me a hard time because I was talking about how Flaherty's so good against lefties.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about that on the pregame show. And then what happens?
Yeah.
For the first 5 lefties he faced, hit home runs.
Right.
But all right, what's the hinge point? What's the matchup? But not everyone loves baseball for that reason. They love just showing up, having a dog. And you worked for the league.
Yeah.
You obviously have experienced this game through so many different lenses.
Yeah.
Where's the game going? And are you happy with kind of the direction with some of the rule changes? And maybe what's the next frontier to ensure that baseball remains, such a big part of the sports dynamic?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say I truly believe the game is in tremendous shape. I believe we have the best athletes who have ever played the game. I really look back even to when I played, less than 10 years ago, and compare it to today's player. I just think that today's athletes are bigger, faster, stronger than ever, more talented than ever, and just watching what they do sometimes amazes me. So I think from that standpoint, the game is really in tremendous shape. I think the commissioner's office has done a tremendous job implementing the new rule changes that we've seen over the last several years. It's shortened game time, obviously, with the pitch clock. I think that there's still ways that we can improve the number of balls in play to create more action in the game and really kind of get the game back to the way maybe it looked when it was designed. It wasn't designed necessarily for strikeouts, walks, and home runs or the three true outcomes. It was designed to have action and put the ball in play. And so I do think for the future of the game, continuing to find ways to create action, and that appeals to the younger fans. Their attention span is shorter. They want to see action. They don't want dead time. And so are there ways that we can try to do that? I believe there are. And I think they're continuing to roll out initiatives aimed towards that. So I do believe the game's in a great spot. I'm excited about where it's headed. And I think that there will always be ways to improve it, but by and large, I think the game is as good as it's ever been.
You mentioned putting the ball in play more, things that you'd like to see happen. Is there anything that, like, concrete you've thought of that could encourage that?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I think the commissioner's office is doing a great job of experimentation with different rule changes and in some independent leagues. And I think ultimately what it comes back to for me is that the game right now is so I guess, dependent on power. Power offensively with slug and home runs, power defensively with velocity and hard pitches. And I'm not positive that power is perfectly um, good for the game. That I think that it's a fun thing to see from time to time, but when the game is solely designed around power only, we've lost the element of skill that I think is important for the game. And these guys are very, very skilled. And so I think a guy that hits 300 but doesn't slug should still have a place in the game. And I don't want the game to get too far away from that. The pitcher like Greg Maddux, who may have I'm probably going to do his strikeout rate injustice, but a guy that has a sub 20% strikeout rate, like Patrick Corbin, but can still get outs, should have a place in the game. There's an art to that, right? It's not just solely about power. And I think one of the beauties of baseball is that you don't have to win um, the genetic DNA lottery, right? That you don't have to win the lottery necessarily genetically to play our game. Our baseball players come in all shapes and sizes. You have Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve sharing the same field, and both are Hall of Fame caliber players. I think that's a great thing for society, for kids to look at. That you can, almost every kid can look out on any given night and find somebody who resembles themselves, and that's the beauty of baseball. And I never want that to go away. And if we make it solely about power, then there are elements of that that could disappear, in my opinion. So let's not lose the skill aspects of the game, because I think that's the beauty of the game and the art of the game.
Well, that is so true, right? Because everybody can see themselves
Yeah.
doing something
Yeah.
on a baseball field, or at least used to be able to, right?
Right.
Whereas I can't picture myself dunking over two dudes in the
Yeah.
paint. I
Yeah.
can't picture myself making a one-handed catch falling
Right.
backward in the end zone.
Right.
There's certain things,
Right.
and I always thought that was a real charm of baseball. It really represents so much of just life, just the experience of life and
Yeah.
dealing with failure and
Completely.
all those different things, and getting yourself back up and getting out there in front of 40,000 people, convincing yourself you can do
Right.
it again the next day,
Right.
right? It is so much a reflection of life. I love that part of it. And I like the idea of rolling it back a little bit. This is the golf argument. Roll the ball back, right?
Right.
The ball, too
Yeah.
much power in golf, right? Let's
Yeah.
make it a more skill game. We can go back
Yeah.
to the 1800s where hitters used to say, I want to hear, right? Or I want to hear.
Right. Right.
That would be,
Exactly.
that would be
Right.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So,
All right. What do we got for fun here?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I found these in a cabinet in my house the other day,
Uh-huh.
and they're MLB ballpark playing cards.
All right.
And it's very random how they're assigned, but
Uh-huh.
it's Yankee Stadium, it's Camden Yards, it's whatever.
Yeah.
So what I want you
That's
to do
cool.
is I want you to pull a card, and then let's see if you've got like a fun memory
All right.
or recollection.
There's a very good chance that the memory is not going to be fun. That I'm going to
Maybe it's
remember
an awful one.
something really bad that happened in one of these stadiums, but
baseball.
we'll roll with it here.
Yeah.
So what do we have? Milwaukee. This is a fun memory.
Oh,
I
good.
got a couple good memories from pitching in Milwaukee. The first one, and this is actually a really fun memory. I took a perfect game into the 8th inning there, 7 2/3 perfect game, and I lost the perfect game in style with a home run to Gabe Kapler.
Oh,
And the reason I'm smiling as I say this is because Nick Hundley, who's a special assistant, and he's on the network. Nick was catching at the time, and as Nick will gladly tell you, Kapler was pinch hitting, and Nick called a slider. It was a 2-0 pitch, and I shook it. He called slider again, and I shook him again, and I threw a fastball that Gabe hit in the stands in left field to break up the perfect game. And Nick has never let me live that down. But what I do remind Nick is I think I had more hits than him in that game. So I did drive in a run that game and had a hit. So anyway, I think I only had one complete game in my career. And it was that day in Milwaukee. So perfect game through 7 2/3. Lost the no-hitter with Nick Hundley catching because I shook my good friend and colleague and did have a complete game. So good memories from Milwaukee.
Oh, that is an
Yeah.
awesome one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't drawn another one. That's fantastic.
All right.
do you?
You're making me nervous here, Jared, because this is like, I don't know if
Yeah,
we can
like,
beat the
that's
good
why-
ones.
that-
But yeah,
that's why
we're
I
gonna
go
leave
with
on
the
a
cards.
negative note, but let's go. I want to roll the dice
more,
again.
I
Let's
guess.
Yeah.
let's see if we have one more good
Yeah.
one here. Yeah. All right. Let's go right here. White Sox. White Sox, US Cellular. Nothing particular jumps out. I remember there was one game I pitched there. I was with Kansas City, and it was probably the coldest, worst conditions in which I played a Major League Baseball game. I don't remember the exact circumstances. I was in the bullpen. It was early in the season, April, and mid-game it started raining, and they called down and said, "You're in the game," probably because they wanted to protect the starting pitchers. So they said, "Put CY in the game." And remember warming up, it's coming down, and it was cold and wet. I could barely feel the baseball, and I think they stopped the game after my first inning. I think there were three, it was the 6th or 7th inning. I was going to pitch for several more innings, and they stopped the game. But I remember it was so cold and so wet, and I was thinking, I'm gonna hit somebody. It's inevitable that the ball's gonna slip out of my hands. And I think I got through the first inning, and I can't even remember if we resumed it, but I do remember it was the coldest and wettest conditions in which I ever played. So not as fun as the Milwaukee story. Yeah.
Way to go, Jared.
Yeah, my fault. My fault. Kind of like Wrigley earlier this year, the coldest games in franchise history. You do love Chicago, maybe not pitching in that weather, but I feel like we've talked. You like Chicago just in general?
I love
Yeah,
the city.
yeah.
Love the city. Yeah, love the city. Didn't particularly love pitching in cold weather, but love the city of Chicago. What a great place, a great baseball city. Yeah.
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 And that was fun.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man. I know it has been a wild couple of weeks. Nothing you probably could have envisioned going into this season, but feeling pretty good about where things are right now.
Yeah, I talked to the staff yesterday, and I kind of look back to 2023. I don't like reflecting back much, but I do sometimes like to look back and kind of break the season down into thirds. And in 2023, the first 60 games, we were 40-20. We ended the season at 90-72. So we were 20 over for our first 60, and we finished the rest of the year. We ended up
2 under?
2 under, basically. And that was good enough to tie for the division lead. We were the wild card team. We tied for the division lead. We played our best baseball the first 2 months of the season, the first 60 games, and it put us in a great spot the rest of the year. And a portion of that was without Corey Seager too. When we really kind of extended our lead in the division and built the 20 game over 500 record. I sort of reflect back on that because I, one, do not believe we have played our best baseball yet. But here we sit here today at 500. The schedule has been challenging. We've played almost every team above 500 to this point. And we haven't been, in my opinion, fully healthy yet. So I do believe as an optimist that the best is yet to come, that the best baseball is ahead of us. This team has not clicked in a way that they are going to. And when these guys get hot together, I really believe that they're going to go on a roll that is going to feel like that 60-game stretch and maybe even longer than that in 2023. So I firmly believe it. I'm confident this group is going to come together in a way that is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great summer around here, and I'm looking forward to that happening. So maybe I can relax and have some stress-free nights here and there. But thus far, it's been it's been an adventure, and but I think the best is yet to come.
It's always a great journey, though, man. That's the whole.
It is.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's the journey.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for taking some time to still
Thanks,
talk
CY.
Rangers.
No, I
with us.
loved it. Thank you guys. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. This is really cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is Chris Young. We'll be back with more Rangers talk after this.
If you love banana pudding, you've got to try Whataburger's Banana Pudding Shake. Back, but for a limited time only. All right, welcome back to Still Talking Rangers. It was great having Chris Young. I didn't ask him. I mean, we could have asked him a lot of questions. I want to ask him, maybe somewhat selfishly, President of Baseball Operations, can you abbreviate that? Can you create the acronym POBO or PROBO if you want, like the PR? I mean,
It's time. It's
PROBO,
probably
'cause
time.
GM, we didn't refer to him as General Manager Chris Young. GM Chris Young. Is it POBO?
It's a good question. It might be time for a new, what we call that, acronym?
Acronym.
It might be time because the GM now is, there is a GM at every ballpark, but there's usually a president of baseball operations who kind of rides shotgun. So maybe it's time to start looking at teams' POBOs.
And if they were from like Louisiana, we could call him a po' boy.
Yeah, that would get confusing.
Yeah,
That
probably.
would be a problem.
What'd you think though? Anything stand out from the conversation with CY?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first of all, that was about a half an hour and didn't really scratch the surface of all the stuff I'd like to talk to him about. But he's so, I do enjoy the fact that he really loves the game. He really loves his team and his passion. That's one of the first interviews I've done with him where I haven't seen his eyes well up. And I'm actually not joking. He gets so fired up when we talk that he gets emotional. And I love that about him. But I just, it was fun to talk a little bit about the overall mission of creating that culture here, because I think that is, I truly, it's not going to happen in a year or two. It's not going to happen in 5 years. It's going to take time, but it can be done. And when it happens, you have fans who do get upset when the team isn't great, and they will hold you accountable. And it's because there is that expectation. And I love when we go to those places where there is that expectation. It's awesome. And I think it absolutely can and should happen here.
And I would even say it's not just that end of the spectrum of they're going to hold you accountable. It's the other end where they also will still believe and legitimately believe, not the anything can happen, everyone's 0-0, but like, all right, we're going to be fired up and upset that, the team has lost 5 of 6 and now is in second place in the division or whatever the scenario might be in July. But we've also seen this team overcome this as well. It's like, I hate it, but in 2023, when the Astros ended up winning the division and, we were sitting there 10-game lead, and what were all those? I mean, the national talking heads, but also the Houston folks. We've been there. I mean, we're fine. It's fine. And sure enough, because they've earned that level of credibility. And
But they believe it too.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the
it's not
thing.
just
You
lip
end up
service.
believing
Right.
it. And that is, we touched on it a little bit, and it's so, it can't be measured, but it's so critical, right? That you understand, you believe that, and I think there's a little piece of that right now with the Rangers, right? As tough as the stretch had been offensively, you think Corey Seager is concerned about whether or not he's going to hit this year? No, he knows he's going to hit. Jock Peterson, et cetera. So at the same time, it's aggravating to watch when they're not working together as a team. But that's why you have players like that, is that they know how to do it. They know that they will get there, and they will get there. They find a way. And that's a big part of winning, man. And you can luck into that. You can accidentally find those guys. The Astros never thought that Jose Altuve, when they brought him along, they never thought that he was going to be this foundational guy who was going to be that critical to the mentality of a city and a team and a 10-year run. But he was. So that's great fortune, and it's a good job of getting the right guy in there and ushering him along. But sometimes you got to go out and get those guys too. Yankees, they did it with Jeter, but that was pretty intentional. They thought that he could be that guy. Sometimes you got to go get those guys. But anyway, I think this team has all the right things in place, and they continue to move in the right direction.
There's that story with Jeter. I forget the name of the scout, but the scout with the Yankees, they were having a conversation, and I don't remember if someone asked if he was going to go to Michigan because he had committed there, or if it was about his first minor league stop. Like, are we going to send him to here or here? But whatever the conversation was, the scout just kind of looked straight faced, said, no, he's going to Cooperstown. Like, they believe, you're right. Like, they believed back then that he was going to be that guy. But that was one guy too. I don't know. Did they believe he was going to be the guy he has been and what he's meant to that? I don't know. And Michael Young, I think about like when the Rangers acquired Michael Young. No way they got him and Darwin Kubion for Esteban Loaiza. There's no way they thought this guy is going to have his jersey number retired here and be one of the most significant people in this franchise's history.
Somebody may have, right? Sometimes it is a scout. I love the scout who's going to shoot his shot, right?
Yeah.
He's going to Cooperstown. Okay. I mean, that's a bold claim. But when you're right, boy, you're kind of a genius.
You'll live off of that, yeah.
And there have been a lot more of the opposite, though, right? Where guys have written off players and written off guys who were not athletic enough, tall enough, strong enough, etc. And then those players end up developing, growing, and becoming Hall of Famers. So you never know in this game. That's what's so fun about it. But again, I think if you're approaching it from like trying to create this framework within which guys can then be successful, and if you get the right guys who believe in it and who really have that internally, and that's the thing about CY, right? He has that. Now, whether that was cultivated or he was born with it, who knows? But certain people are born a certain way, and that fire still burns pretty hot in him.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, right? I'm sure it's a problem sometimes for him at times where he just can't control his frustrations, but it's also what drives him to do what he does.
No, I 100%.
He's a fascinating guy, man.
Yeah. Just forget like his current role. His career is fascinating. He was traded twice before he even played in the major league, right? The Rangers were his third organization. He gets to play for his hometown team. I mean, hometown hero, bam, you're traded, right? He bounces around, wins a World Series, different roles. Like, he's experienced it all. He's seen it all. He's hit a home run, right? He's even done it, and he heard that was kind of funny, giving Nick Hundley a little grief there for his offensive performance in that near perfect game.
Dude, he's got a lot of pride too. And you're talking about a guy who was a premium basketball player too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that CY can do.
I'd love to. I've tried to ask him about it, and he doesn't love talking about like patting himself on the back. He dropped 20 points at Allen Fieldhouse. Yeah. Princeton goes in, you score 20. I think Nick Collison, Kirk Heinrich were on those Kansas teams. I mean, you're not a schluck. Like, you can't just luck into scoring 20 in that environment on the road. I mean, he was a good player. He was a really good player. He signed an NBA, or he had an NBA contract offered to him by the Kings.
Now, that question I asked him, by the way, about Corbin, and does he see any 2015 CY in Corbin? Here's the reason I asked that question. I think CY was comeback player of the year in 14, and then he was not pursued by anybody in the offseason. And he couldn't understand why. It was really frustrating to him. He's like, I mean, I just posted. Why is nobody coming to me? Eventually, Dayton Moore and the Royals come to him and like, hey, can't pay you a ton, but would you like to come play with us? Well, he actually had kind of identified Kansas City the year before. It's like, man, I like what they've got going on over there. So he does. And he's told the story before of going into the clubhouse, and the first day, Mike Moustakas reaching out, giving him a handshake, introducing himself. Hi, Mike Moustakas. Welcome to Kansas City Royals. We're going to the World Series this year. Or we're going to win the World Series this year. And how that struck him at that time. And he was like, yes, they have in this clubhouse what I thought they had looking from the outside. And I think that drives, and we didn't really get into it with him today. I think a part of that experience is what drives his interest in building that same sort of culture here.
Yeah, we're all a product of our experiences, right? And that was when Kansas City went on their run in 14 and then got back in 15. We heard the C word a ton. The culture that was built and ingrained within that clubhouse. It was not a team full of Hall of Fame bound players. I don't know that we knew for sure Salvador Perez was probably a Hall of Fame player back then. I mean, he was a really
I
good
think we knew
player.
he was pretty, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, you never know. Like, it wasn't like he was 10 years into his career and he's definitely going, right? He had the foundation for it. But who else on that team that won it in 15? Who else is a Hall of Fame player, right? And not that every World Series team has multiple, but point
Right.
being, there was something beyond just the talent in the back of the baseball cards that allowed them to do what they did. And that was, you know, they went back to back. They lost to the Giants in 14. Not easy to get back. They went back in 15 and took care of business against Jacob deGrom and the Mets.
Yeah. Pretty awesome. How about his stories, too, by the way?
Yeah.
Drawing a card, and that was brilliant. I really loved it. You want to draw a card?
Let's do one, yeah.
Give me a story, some memory, something you've got from one of these places.
I got an ace, Atlanta.
Huh.
I just want to make sure that this is truest. I got to know if it's old. Well, I guess I'll say this. I don't have, if I can use Atlanta, I've only been a truist once. It was last year when we faced the Braves. But I'll say Atlanta, growing up, I would go home from school. I'd turn on WGN. I'd watch the Cubs. Sometimes the White Sox, but a lot of times it was the Cubs. And Sammy Sosa, this was before Sosa, you know, became massive home run hitter, but he was their guy, right? And I'd love watching him hit a home run and then do his little Sosa jump, shuffle, slide thing out of the box. And I'd love listening to, you know, Harry Carey and the broadcast. But then the game would end and I'd turn on TBS. And this is Turner Stadium. It wasn't Truist Park, but I'd watch the Braves. And this is like in the 90s when the Braves were awesome. You know, it wasn't just their pitching staff. They had a bad you-know-what lineup too. And then I'd watch the Rangers. I wouldn't watch the whole Braves game. The Braves would carry me to the Rangers. But that was like a lot of nights for years. And I think of the Braves as a team that helped, along with the Cubs and, of course, the Rangers. Those three teams, I think, were instrumental in cultivating a love of baseball because it was on. And I got to watch those. This is before there was MLB Network with their game of the week. You know what? Like, that was my chance. Sunday Night Baseball, Fox Saturday Baseball. But during the week, that was it. And so I don't have a great Truist Park story, but I guess that has to be the best I can do there with the Braves.
Yeah. Think of Travis d'Arnaud immediately.
Well, 3 home run game. Here you go. You do one, and you probably. I mean, you got.
I mean, maybe
more
there's something. Maybe
experiences.
nothing. Maybe nothing. We'll see what we got here. Well, this is Citi Field, right? So the Mets. I'll kind of twist it a little bit because, of course, it was Shea Stadium before they moved to Citi, and at Shea Stadium. There was in the old press box, the visiting radio booth, which is where I would have experienced Shea Stadium. There was a little lamp that hung over, you know, it was a cruddy old booth in an old stadium. And so there was this heat lamp that hung over the top of the booth. It was about 2-3 feet in length. And it just had those radiator coils that would turn orange if it was a cold day. And on that rusted out old little radiator thing was a piece of duct tape that hung about 2-3 inches long, on which Pat Hughes, the longtime radio voice of the Chicago Cubs, had written a little note to memorialize the spot where Ron Santo, his partner for many, many years, a dear man and just a sweetheart of a human being, and also a delightful listen back in the day. But Ron Santo, great third baseman, Hall of Famer, he had his toupees, and they had all sorts of different ones. His gamers, you know, his going out on the towns, all these things. But he lost one of his gamers during the national anthem at Shea Stadium when he stood up to hand over the heart for the anthem, and his toupee caught on fire because of the heat lamp, and he didn't know it. And it was the greatest radio because Pat Hughes, oh, Ronnie, it looks like your head's on fire. And And Sam was like, what are you talking about, Patrick? And he's like, well, I think your gamers caught flame from the radiator. Anyway, so they
were on air.
Oh yeah, and so they memorialized that spot. Pat Hughes, genius, another Hall of Fame broadcaster. Yeah, those two were some of my favorites back in the day. But so I always loved seeing that little piece of tape at Shea Stadium.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
We got to dig that up. Is that available?
Yeah, we'll have to find
Okay.
that somewhere.
All right.
We can find that. Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think? Episode 3 in the books.
Oh, that was fun. I'd like to keep going, but in a little bit, we're going to still be talking Rangers on the pregame show and then the broadcast.
Yep, on RSN.
RSN.
All right, well, there you go. Still talking Rangers, episode 3. I want to thank Chris Young, our POBO here of the Texas Rangers, president of baseball operations, for joining us. For Mike and Jonathan, Tim, Hannah, and everyone else a part of our broadcast, he's Dave Raymond. I'm Jared Sandler. Thanks so much for being with us, and we will still be talking Rangers baseball with you until our next episode. So tune in, tune out, whatever. Rate, like, subscribe, love. Give us a fist bump. Just know that no matter what you're doing, we'll be still talking Rangers.